Hi there, folks. This is Deckard Spade, and today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy XIV. I'm currently broadcasting from the Midgardsammer server in the We Say Hooray Free Company House, WeSH for short. And I want to talk to you guys about where the game has been, where we are now, and where it's going. So let's start. Originally released in 2010, Final Fantasy XIV was not what people expected. There was a lot of focus on the graphics engine and how pretty the game looked, but there was very little emphasis on gameplay. You see, the developers of the game didn't know how to build an MMO. Sure, they promised a big game, but they really didn't know what they were doing. And because they didn't know what they were doing, they tried to lift a lot of what they had from Final Fantasy XI's success. They basically copied all of the races from the game. And despite the renaming, they tried to keep a lot of the same structure for how the classes worked. But aside from that, they had no experience in creating the gameplay mechanics that would make the game successful. So they had to start from square one, and they ended up pandering to children whom they thought were their main audience, which in turn felt that they needed to placate the concerns of the parents of those children who would be playing the game. You see, back then, Japan had a problem where their youths were playing MMOs way too much, and I can empathize with the idea of wanting to be able to slow that down, but the primary consumer for an MMO would generally be somebody who could pay for it. So, introduce the Levy Quest system. The idea was that you would pick up several quests that you would do over the course of the time you had allotted to you. You could only pick up several cards. You could do several more quests if you were able to play with your friends, but as time went on, the amount of experience that you gained went down. And then when you were done with your quests, you got virtually nothing. This was to simulate for children that people needed downtime, that they got tired, that they were able to actually go and do the quests, but then they would have to move on and do stuff in real life. Again, this was in an MMO, where the primary consumer base was adult. You can picture the amount of rage that went on in the forums. Adults were not able to go home after a long day's work just so that they could play the game that they wanted to play for the rest of the day, and then end up having themselves limited to playing for maybe an hour or less because they were capable of playing the game that fast. And then by that time, you would have to wait until 24 hours later, you'd be able to play for 1 hour of game time. Now couple this with a subscription that you had to pay monthly, and you only got 30 hours of game time for $15. This was not the game's only problem. Aside from suffering from bad controls, slow attack speeds, slow grinding, and trying to get any semblance of experience by trying to party up with whomever might have the same quest to most efficiently get your hour of game time in, the game also suffered from hallway syndrome. Before Final Fantasy XIII came out, Final Fantasy XIV came out, and it had hallway syndrome. The world was not expansive. It was full of hallways that were drawn out to try and give you the illusion of expansion, which led to overcrowding in the populated areas of the game. People didn't know where they were going or whether they were coming because some of these hallways intersected for no reason. A lot of players voiced their concerns over the game, and by the end of it, Square Enix had their lead developer and the team that was working on the game admit that they did not know what they were doing. This is the first game that Square Enix publicly apologized for. Now, they did take their lead team from other games and try to fix the game itself. The problem was, they didn't have enough time, they didn't have the ability to sustain the servers, and a lot of the player base had already left. The game itself had a last event, something that was end game for all the players who stuck through it even though it was horrible. And the result? Well, I'll let the video speak for it. every time that I watch this, I get goosebumps. You see, the players were honored with something at the end of the game. They participated in an event that dictated the history of the game when it was reopened. A Realm Reborn, the current game that we've been playing now, takes place years after the events of that battle. This was known as the Battle of Cartanoon, where the Warriors of Light and the Sage WeSH stood with the rest of the nations that had banded together against the Garlean Empire. The head of the Imperial Legion had managed to unlock the prison that had held the Elder Primal Bahamut, and it raged across the lands and the battlefield, wrecking everything in its path. Failing to recontain the creature in the battlefield, WeSH does what he can to save the Warriors of Light, casting a spell to alter the flow of time and send them 5 years into the future. A Realm Reborn begins with the Warriors of Light reappearing in the land of Eorzea. For those who stuck it out, they maintained their characters and levels as legacy characters, meaning special tattoos to mark them as those types of players that survived. It's not really important to the story if you're a legacy character or not, but it's something that's just fluff. Enjoyable fluff. Otherwise, everybody starts off in the same place as the game starts anyways. Level 1 in one of the 3 main cities. The desert nation of Ul'dah, ruled by the Sultana, the spiritual and naturalistic empire of Gridania, led by its seed seer, and the seaside nation of Limsa Lominsa, led by its admiral. Till sea swallows all. Sorry, you'll get the reference when you play it. Without killing the story for anybody who hasn't played it yet, the idea is that you're playing a warrior of light, fixing all the troubles of the land by questing and adventuring all across Eorzea. During this time, you will explore dungeons, fight giant monsters, and cross swords with the Garlean Empire. Since its original release, the game's controls are infinitely better. Rather than having to wait for your attacks multiple seconds before you can actually pull them off between auto attacks, the game now lets you select freely amongst the abilities that you learn for your class, and they let you do so every 2.8 seconds. This, combined with instant action buttons, makes for a very fluid combat. The game also has crafting and gathering classes. These level up with experience, usually from crafting or playing some kind of mini-game involving crafting and gathering the materials. Leveling quests also still exist, but they're not used in a restrictive manner anymore. These are considered a bonus means to getting experience, and by no means are considered a primary way to have to do your leveling. The fate system was also introduced, allowing players to be able to go into specific areas where randomly spawned events will let you participate and fight certain types of monsters, or gather certain types of items, or even experience certain story events that might be going on at the time. The game also goes out of its own way in order to let players play every class with one character. And as you level a character's job, you get more abilities. These abilities, in turn, can be linked from one job to another, interchangeably. This makes the game very dynamic. The main game's level cap is at level 50, and has recently been extended to level 60 for those who are playing the expansion, Heavensward. The main game's classes start at different names, but they all end up with what we're familiar with. Warrior, Paladin, Monk, Dragoon, Bard, Ninja, White Mage, Black Mage, Summoner, and even Scholar. The Heavensward classes work more like advanced classes. You have to be level 50 and have beaten the main story in order to get into Heavensward. Once you manage to get into the main area, you can become a Dark Knight, an Astrologian, or a Machinist. All these classes end up with the classification of being tanks, DPS, or healers. They each have their own flavor and mechanics. I would recommend experimenting as much as you can with each one, and sometimes you might find things work better if you can level one class and put the abilities into another. Now, if you're worried that leveling is the only thing that you're going to do in this game, don't. There's also mini-games. The Manderville Gold Saucer provides the following activities for your amusement: Chocobo Racing, random arcade games, Fate mini-games, which are known as gates, which give you different Simon Says type games, or Don't Stand in the Lava, or obstacle courses to traverse in order to get money, and Triple Triad, which has been remastered for Final Fantasy XIV. The minigames run off of MGP, Manderville Gold Saucer Points. You can only buy 500 to start, and then after that, you have to win your total in order to claim enough for the prizes you want from the prize list. All of which are aesthetic items which don't affect the game entirely, but are neat to show off. Now, I can continue to keep going on, but I think we're reaching the end of our show for today. For the future of Final Fantasy XIV, things are looking good. I hope to see you guys heavensward. And as always, thanks for staying a while to listen.